Welcome back to Backroom Convos. I'm your host at the most Lesego M, aka Shoot Your Shot, and maybe you might get a chance to call me Daddy like Cairo. Listen, if you are a fan of sports, stay tuned because you might like what we are cooking. On today's episode, we were talking, let me just say this. On today's episode, we had Kgomotso Setwaba. For those of you who know her, she's been on the podcast before, and I think on the episode that we recorded, I did mention that we've had her before. So we had a specific topic that we're supposed to be, we spoke about. We had a specific topic that we spoke about on today's episode, the earlier on episode. So it was supposed to be a 30 minutes episode, but we ended up spending more time on that episode because we had a lot to talk about, and there was just so much to touch on, and we just didn't want to as well. Like, it could have just ended very bad for any of us, because I think she's also in Univen. There's institutions, let me just not mention names, there's institutions that are involved, and like us just throwing some of these things out there, you might get that, there's just there's just so many red tapes around this, so I think as much as we said less, but the less that we said might get us in trouble, but I really appreciate episodes of honesty. And as much as I felt like we could have just released that episode, but I'm also not, I'm also like mindful of the fact that she's aware of what that might do to her, and as far as like her getting her degree, and I'm also like mindful of that as well. I'm like, I don't wanna, I think if I'm the person not getting it, that's fine, but if it involves somebody else, then it becomes a problem, right? So I think that became a topic of discussion, to say like we have so many things to say about this specific topic, because now I think she is a law student. As much as she is a law student, they had that topic to talk about, right? So, but at the same time, I'm like, it's different when the institution is the one that's initiating and letting you guys have all these conversations, right? But it's different when you have the same conversations that are, some of the problems are happening within the institution and they are not resolved, and there's still ongoing investigations, and when you go out, you blab, you speak to people, this catches a lot of traction, then someone is getting in trouble. I think that's the biggest problem, I think, with today's episode that we had with Kgomotso, because we said a lot of things, very meaningful things, very impactful things that might change a lot of people's lives, people that are involved. Because also you need to be aware of the fact that I guess there's just so many people that are influential, people that also like listen to the podcast. We've had people that sending out emails to people that want to come to the podcast, so they go out to listen to some of the episodes, and if they hear that, they might want to help or offer a helping hand to some of the students, or start conversations that are questioning the policies, or how do they improve the policy, and I guess my take was maybe she was not comfortable with that, and of which it's understandable, and I respect that for her, So, and before we go forward with this conversation, I just would like to say that there is no book for the day today. This conversation, I think it's just really I'm so sorry for that. It's really an episode where I just wanted to reflect on the interview that I had with Kgomotso. Of which we discussed the nitty-gritties of this episode last night, and I had to come up with some of the questions, of which I didn't even ask, because on whatever she was saying, I was like, oh, like, this is personal, this hits at home, and I had to restructure within the episode and ask some of the questions, freestyle some of the questions, and felt like, like the questions that I had were not really, like, let me just say, I didn't really have a picture of what was going on. But through that, I understood, which, this is what's going on in Univen. This is what's going on in so many places, right? So then it becomes a question of, okay, now this is the real experience. My questions were like surface level, was just scratch of the surface, So now I went back, and like within that, I went back and I'm like, I didn't like really go back. I was like, it really went back in my mind. I'm like restructuring some of the questions that I really had for her. So, and we started asking her both questions, and it was like super sensitive for her. I don't know if that's from personal experience or what she's going through currently, as far as like policy holders, as far as, because she also asked us not to release that episode publicly. So I also respected that, and there might just be a lot, at this. And I so wish that we can, within our podcast, I so wish that we can have so many of these conversations with these people, or people in general, from different spheres of life, to share some of these impactful stories, to enlighten, to build, to, improve. These are like some thought-provoking conversation, and one of those episodes was the conversation that I had with Kgomotso Setwaba, of which I truly appreciate from her. You just pull up and like say, as much as she was not comfortable with like us releasing the episode, and we had to stop mid-interview because she was like, this might get me in trouble, A, B, and C. So I respected that, and I'm like, you've given us a lot already, there's a lot that you've given us. We can work with this and make this work. But it's like, like anyone can get, and give it. I think, again, if anyone were to stumble upon that interview and realize what is Kgomotso, it will get her in trouble. And I didn't understand that. And I think what we should have done instead, we should have been in a position where we're like, okay, this might get Kgomotso in trouble. Let's rather not make him an anonymous person, make him an anonymous person, and have that discussion rather. But as I say, we didn't know the depth of the interview. Like the trajectory it could have, like nobody had anticipated it would take the trajectory that it took. So we had to improvise, and we realized that we really touched on some nervy stuff. Some things are like super sensitive, and we were like, like indulging. We were going deep, and he was like, I'm not sure if this can be released, because damn, I'm so sorry for the word, I'm not for profanity, but he was like, like we've touched on a lot, and this took a trajectory that I didn't expect. So respect to her. Shout out to everybody that was tuning in, listening to that. And yeah, man, we're still having a lot of guests, and I'm also like working on improving my, public speaking skills and having more guests, man. Thank you for listening. I'm your host at the most, Lesego M, Daddy Report, aka Shisha Short. Maybe you might get a chance to call me Daddy like Cairo. Cheers.